Good morning. Good morning, Diego.
Morning,
Okay,
Julia.
so we're here with Diego Limoeiro, a friend and a former client. And Diego and I both were sort of neighbors, right? Living in the Berkshires, complaining a lot about the weather and all that. And today I have the pleasure of having him here so we can hear a little bit about how he has gotten to the point in his life, his professional career that he's at right now. And after we get a little bit more understanding of what he has done and the steps he took to get here, I'm going to ask Diego some questions about culture, which is what this work is all about. I always say that you may understand and know the language and speak the language really well, but if you don't have the cultural knowledge, you're going to struggle.
Troubles.
Yeah, you're going to have troubles. You're going to struggle to reach your goals in the United States. Tell us a little bit more, Diego, about where you are in life right now and how you got there.
All right. So I am from Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. And being a dentist, I graduated from dentist school there in Brazil in 2004, so a while ago. And in 2019, actually a little bit before that, but we moved to United States in 2019, so not too long ago, right? So I never thought in my life moving to United States before, even though
Interesting.
we had traveled a lot to here as a tourist. Actually, I started thinking a while after my daughter was born. So we had some violence and went actually to the Nova University when I was here as a tourist. I had a contact with the director program there from one of the programs.
Let me just add that this is Nova University in Florida.
University.
That's the place that you visited.
In Florida. Yeah, Nova Southwestern University in Florida.
Yeah.
And I went there to talk to a director of one of the that accepts international dentists. And he was completely open-minded. Oh, yes, we accept a lot of international students here. Well, I didn't know exactly what he was trying to say to me. Follow the steps, which steps,
I see.
But I knew at least there was a possibility, right?
Did you know before this visit to Nova that you could become a dentist in the US?
I knew, but as everybody says, it is extremely difficult, a lot of steps, a lot of difficult tests. I didn't know exactly which steps should be taken. That day, I remember that I will move to United States. I used to have guitar classes. And I remember in that moment, I texted my guitar professor that I was quitting. Because I had already in my mind, I need to prepare myself. I need to prepare myself to move to United States. I will put all my endeavors, all my efforts to understand, to practice the language. I was in a very basic English at that moment. Years that I didn't practice. I will not have time to practice guitar anymore, and I have a lot of stuff to do.
That's so interesting. That was your first decision. It's like, I don't have time for guitar classes.
My first decision was with the guitar classes.
Yeah, and it's the symbol of it, right? That is how you demonstrated to yourself that you were making that commitment. Yes. I want to mention this just in terms of people listening. Perhaps you may have a vision, a dream for what you want. And the moment you take a first practical step is the moment you begin to commit.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. I needed to put two parallel pathways, immigration and my career. So I was focusing the two things. So first of all, I started studying for the board's exam, dental board exam. And I was contacting a lot of law firms, immigration law firms. I remember that I signed a contract with the law firm in December 2018. And in January 2nd, I bought a ticket to moving to US.
With your family, my family, right? With your wife
and my daughter. So everything I tried to put a date. For example, study for the boards, the same thing. The first thing that I did was scheduling the exam. So I should be ready. In my mind, I will schedule when I will be ready. I will never schedule.
Yeah. Diego, what you're saying is really so important for other people to hear also. I
Yep.
talk to a lot of people who have a vision of what they want, but they haven't taken the steps. They haven't planned. What you're telling us is just how you sort of forced yourself to get out of your comfort zone
Oh, for sure.
because you knew
Yeah.
that if you didn't set that, you would not get out of your comfort zone.
So I was speaking to a friend. It's like we are in the war, but I am breaking in battles, and I need to win each battle first to win the war. You understand what I?
This is excellent advice for everybody who has some itch to get out of the situation that they're in. You know, I
Yep.
told you that I just finished recording and editing the signature program that we have.
Yep.
And one of the units is a bonus course. And it's the first time I created this. Developing Your Strategy is the name of that bonus course. Because without a strategy, things remain a dream. I actually call this course the ground zero, because
Yep.
everything else you do should derive from that strategy. So how do you do this? How do you get out of the inertia? And you're saying one way
This is
is to
true.
just
Yeah.
set a date, a deadline.
Yeah. And you can imagine, I graduated in 2004. This was 2019. So I was in a pretty like good life, my comfort zone.
Right. Yes.
Right? I didn't have any like bigger trouble, financial issues, health issues in my life. I had
Yeah.
a daughter, I have established family. So,
Yeah.
and it's not easy. It is
Right.
completely feasible. It is completely possible.
You're right. It's an endurance test too, right?
Yeah.
Because there are many opportunities to give up.
Yeah, oh, for sure. I remember when I moved to Florida and I worked as an Amazon packer for a while there. So how many opportunities I had to give up? A lot.
We had this conversation. Let's make that clear in case people didn't understand what you just said. The pandemic hit. You could not get any kind of position, even though you had the permission to work at that point.
Yes.
And you were going to work in a dental office as a dental assistant. And then the pandemic hits.
March 2020. Yep.
And dental offices are closed. And so you could just have said, this is not what I had planned. I'm giving up. We're heading back to Brazil. Instead, you took a job that was extremely hard, emotionally and physically, right?
Yep.
Doing the packaging for Amazon, taking turns with your wife.
Yep, taking turns to take care of our daughter. Yeah. Sometimes overnight, sometimes during the day.
And you know what? This is the story that Diego told at the beginning of his intent letter. That's why I know it so well, because we worked together on your intent letter. Your wife was arriving in the morning, your child in the back. She went in to work the day shift, and you went home to sleep and take care of your daughter.
And daughter in the car, 45 minutes to go back in our
each
car.
way. So what we did, I think that's also interesting to say, if you need to make an argument in the United States that you really want something, if you have a story of an obstacle to reaching that goal, you need to tell that story. Because when Diego told that story, he was showing that he's persistent, that he doesn't give up easily, that his vision is firm.
And I think probably in almost all interviews that I had in this last cycle, they talk about this situation.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Really? So it was really valuable to not hide that, right?
Yeah,
when something breaks in our plans, we don't hide that. We use it to show that we persisted in spite of it.
Like a leverage. And then you have a lot of to talk about.
That is fascinating, Diego. That is something that was interesting to them.
They brought up, and instead of asking about how you do a filling, how you do an extraction, how you do an implant, they took some piece of information to understand about myself, right? This is completely different from other countries. I can talk from Brazil. Here in the US, they want to know about yourself much before you get hired.
As a person. As a person, which is interesting. At the same time, there's the separation between the personal and the professional, right? So they don't necessarily want to know, or they shouldn't even ask if you have children, if you're married and all. That's what they want to know, is who you are as a person, what your personality is, and really how much hard stuff can you manage? Because once you're a student in their program, you will have
Yeah.
to deal with a lot of hard things. They want to know how you deal with that.
Just a simple example. Sometimes we spend in the interview, actually, in my opinion, most of the interviews that I went through, they
And you
spend
went through
more,
several.
yeah, several.
Mm-hmm.
I think I can say all of them spend more time talking about myself, not about dentistry. Because for the dentistry part, either they have the bench test to score you,
Yeah.
or they have your resume.
Yeah, exactly. This is something important. I think a lot of people think of interviews as an opportunity to sort of retell the story of their career. And that's not what's wanted. They already have that information. The interview is an extra opportunity to get to know other parts of you.
Yeah. So your book, Julia, helps a lot to understand these cultural
Oh,
differences.
I don't have it on me right now, but yeah, What the United States Wants is the name of the book. So one of the things I talk about there, and it sounds like you had that information before you even read the book, because the book hadn't come out yet when you were starting this process.
No, this is
the importance of paying attention to who your audience is.
Uh-huh.
Right? Oh, there you go. Great. There's the book. Yes.
Yep.
So it's easier to just create one document and take it on the road for any,
Oh yeah, make
it's
copies
the
and
same
that's it.
show everywhere. But that's mediocre, right? And you don't want to be mediocre when you are looking for something that's going to change your life. Yeah. So let's just go back a little bit. So immigration is one audience, and you were then applying to universities so that you could revalidate your degree, and those letters and that resume had to be different. What did you have to do differently?
Well, first of all, I knew that, for example, my resume should have no more than 2 pages. And I thought myself, wow, how can I
How do you
cut
do
this?
that?
How I
Right.
do that? What is important to be there? What I should put there to have 2 pages, right?
Yeah.
So
Let me ask you a question. I just recently talked to somebody who said, yeah, I'm finishing my resume and then I'm going to translate it from Portuguese to English. Do you suggest that people do that?
no, of course not. It will not come out in a good way. In the applications, universities, everything should make sense. Your curriculum, your letters of recommendations, and your intent letter.
Yeah.
Everything should match.
Yeah. Let me add something now that you're saying this. I recently had somebody say, could you do my recommendation letters? But somebody else is doing my resume. And I said, I can't. The person who does the resume should also do the recommendation letters, because there has to be an exact connection between one and the other. So, Diego, just tell us, did you count how many interviews you've gone through? Do you have a number?
Well, in this past cycle, I had 8 interviews.
8. So successful with the interviews. Yes.
Yeah. In 2019, I did my first application. That's why I told you how important it is to have everything in line, immigration and your application. Because in 2019, I did some applications. I was accepting a program, but I couldn't go because I didn't have a co-signer in that moment. The next year, in 2020, I was already with my immigration almost done, and I resent the applications. I used the same materials, the same letters, the curriculum, same thing that I had before. I just got one interview. So
you think they noticed that it was the same material?
I don't know, probably.
Yeah. Then we redid all your materials for the following year. And that's when you got the 8 calls. Yeah, which is really extraordinary. Right.
Oh, yeah.
And not just any program. I mean, major program, to the point where you had to decide which one to accept.
Yeah. It's a good headache, right?
Yes. You're really a model for many people. I think an inspiration for many people who are starting this process. I mean, I've heard this recently from a new client. Yeah, I've heard about Diego Limoeiro and he was able to do it. Can you tell us a little bit about where you
Yeah.
interviewed and what you decided ultimately?
Yeah, so I got invitations for interview at Florida, Nova Southwest University in Florida,
Mhm.
Temple University in Philadelphia, Columbia University in New York,
I mean, top
Rochester,
names.
yeah, Rochester, New York, Rutgers, New Jersey. So by the end, I decided the Temple University.
Which is very hard to get into,
Yeah,
right?
the director told us that will be 7 students.
7 total. That's a very
New
small class.
and
Is this the AEGD program?
ADT program. And I am the only Latino. And they had, I think, they say over the 300 applications.
That's really extraordinary. Yeah. I mean, what an accomplishment, right? You're
And,
competing against 300 people. There are 7
and I
spots.
need to tell you something. How important is the interview and to be prepared for the interview? Listen to this story. I was driving because it is 5 hours from my home. When I was 1 hour from my home, I received an email from Temple and they decided, well, we will have a bench test. The first time that they decided to do a bench test, they have a new director and they decided to have a bench test. So, and I'm used to practice with my loops. And if you are used to use loops, you cannot do without. And I remember that I called my wife and she told, oh, come here just 1 hour. Come back. Yeah, take your loops and go.
You got the
Okay.
right wife to go through this
Yeah.
process.
And I went back. So, okay. During the bench test, they asked a few things. One of those, I did not have any idea how to do it.
Really?
I didn't know. I never done this before, even dental school. I have no clue what to do in the bench test.
So
All
what
right.
did you do? I mean, most people
So
would
we
pack up and go home.
so no, so they have few things that I knew to do, like preparation for crowns, fillings. Okay. So we were in the bench test, and during certain moments, someone called you, can you go to the interview? And during the interview, I talked to the 2 professors that were there, and I told them, listen, I am here to be a better dentist.
Mhm.
I don't know, of course, everything. And I need to tell you, one of the things, this thing, I have no idea how to do it. I told them during the interview, don't expect me to be the best dentist
I
here.
love
I
this.
am here to learn.
I love
I think
how
I
you
didn't.
didn't hide it. You went,
No.
you were honest,
Yep.
but at
Yep.
the same time, you used this moment to tell them how much you are just ready to learn.
Yeah. Yeah. So I am here to learn. I am ready to learn. So these things that you asked me to do, I have no
Yeah.
idea to do.
How did they react?
They smile. That's it. They
Yeah.
smile, they laugh, and
Yeah.
that's it. And
Wow.
finally, I was accepting this program.
Right. Right.
So probably the bench test wasn't the key factor to be accepted. If I didn't tell them, probably would be a different story. But I brought this up during the interview.
Yes, yes. And Diego, that brings us to this question that always interests me the most, of course, which is the cultural differences. Like if you were in Brazil, would you have done something differently? In this situation, this was a challenge put in front of you, right? And I think often in our country, we try to sort of brush it over and pretend it didn't happen.
Yep.
And
Yep.
Americans want directness, they want the truth. And maybe you acted in a more culturally appropriate way than maybe another another
And I,
Latino would have.
yeah, yes, for sure. I don't know if I would bring this up to an interview if I were in
Right.
Brazil. I don't know,
Yeah.
because it is something very, very cultural. So the things that I advise people.
Yes, let's talk a little bit about that. What would you tell people who are starting this process?
Yeah. So first of all, try to do 2 different pathway immigration and application to universities. The second is try to immerse in American culture. I was in Brazil during my commute before I moved. I was listening US radios all the time, watching
Yep.
news, US news all the time, not
Yes.
only for the language itself, but about culture.
It's not just what words to use, but it's
Yeah.
how to use the
You act.
words.
So your book brings a great idea about cultural, about documents, about how you think, the stories that you bring up in the book. It's extremely helpful. It's a great source to understand cultural differences. So the newsletters that you bring,
Yeah, anybody can sign up for that. Yeah, they're
everybody can sign
free.
up. You have always information
Yeah.
about cultural difference. It's very important. Not only the way that you speak, your voice tune, your intonation.
Yes, yes, yes. And I'm thinking about your personality. So you're very warm, right?
Yes,
I mean,
am.
I just love getting your messages. It's an instant boost to my day, but that can be intimidating sometimes culturally, right? For
And one
Americans.
thing I didn't mention, I was working as a limit license in Massachusetts, here in this town that I'm living. And I remember few days after I started, probably a few weeks, I guess, my director, he's an immigrant also. He called me and talked, Dr. Diego, just pay attention the way that you talk to the patients.
A little too warm, too friendly.
Yeah, too friendly. You understand about Americans and their space. Latinos thinks a little bit different about your space,
Your
right?
personal space.
Yeah, your personal space. But I didn't change much.
I was going to say, from what you told me, you were also known for that, for your warmth. It was the
Exactly.
patients appreciated that.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm talker. I tell jokes and I tell my
Yeah.
stories with
Yes.
all of them. With all
Yeah.
of them.
So in this case, you found that you didn't have to change. It actually
I
worked
was
out. Even if your boss was a little worried.
I was being respectful with the patients, don't
Yeah.
invading their personal space. But I was warm.
Now, Diego, were there things that you felt that you had to change, where something came naturally to you, but it was maybe misunderstood by Mexico, or you felt that was not culturally appropriate? I think it's important to know that different states are different, right? So
Yeah.
when I moved to Massachusetts, so the Boston area, and this was so many years ago, maybe it's different now because there are more immigrants, but I really had to learn not to hug people.
Oh, yes.
I was scaring people by giving them a simple hug. So I had to adjust that. Was there something that you used to do that you
Yes,
noticed?
when I noticed, I am a Catholic and I went to the Mass on Sundays. In Brazil, we have the sign of peace. We have the sign of peace. It is in the ritual Catholic Mass. Everybody hugs each other, shake hands. And here, it is just like this.
Yep.
And Julia, I went to Brazil a few weeks ago, and when someone was hugging me, I was sometimes.
Yes. Isn't that interesting? Yeah.
It is interesting.
So we begin to adopt the ways from the country where we are. Yes, absolutely.
This is true. I think was the thing that comes to my mind that was most difficult, most noticeable.
Tell us, as we're coming to a close soon, is there any advice that you want to give to people starting the process that you just concluded so beautifully with your latest acceptance to a program?
Yeah. So prepare in advance. Don't let for the last minute. Most of the time, you'll need to make a lot of adjustments. In my case, I had Julia help me. If possible, start as soon if you putting this in your mind, set a goal, start to understand this process. It is not a simple process. It is not a test like in Brazil to be accepted to university. And for example, you have your GPA. So it is an average of your scores during the university. And a lot of people, a lot of candidates are accepted and they don't have a high GPA.
Right. Yeah.
much more probably because their personality and other things. So something that they most appreciate, like volunteer, something that you can build your resume. Sometimes you don't have a strong resume and you're thinking for the future. So what should I do to strengthen my package?
Right.
So
Yeah. Because you are a package. There's no way around that. You are preparing a package and you're selling yourself with that package. Wonderful. So, what a great story you have. And you really reached an incredible goal. I'm
no,
very
for
proud
sure.
of you. I celebrate with you. Yeah. Yeah.
No, for sure. It is a process. A lot of people help me. And after I was accepted in that program, I got in touch with everyone and I reached everyone. The dentist that helped me.
Very beautiful and very generous. Yeah.
Yeah, sure, right? It's easy to bother them. Oh, do this, and that's it. No.
Yeah. Beautiful. Thank you so much, Diego. Some real gems in this interview that I think will help many people.
Yeah, and I'm sure that you can help not only people that are applying to any kind of programs, but also immigrations. Now you
Yes.
have a lot of
Yes.
experience in
Yes.
both of
Immigrations. And
situations.
yep. And this signature program that we're finishing up now is going to be a way to get more people to get that information without the expense of having somebody help them one-on-one.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I see a lot of people just going online and, downloading a recommendation letter template, and that just doesn't do it. That will not be enough for the kind of big goals, such as the ones that we are talking about here.
Yeah, because I think write letters, even recommendation, intent letter, immigration, it is an art. It is
An
something,
art.
so it's not
Yeah.
something for everyone, especially if you are not native or very proficient.
Right. Right. It's the
Somebody should
language and
help
the
you.
culture. Yeah. Good,
All
good.
right.
Thank you,
Thank
Diego.
you so much, Julie.